All right, we're live.
Well, thanks for making your way into the office, Susan. That's awesome.
Well, it's so close.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it seems like it's close to everything. Yeah, close to Jay's. Everyone says that, so I think it's awesome.
Well, it's close to her because she lives across the street from me, so
Yeah,
it's
that's,
so
well,
that makes
you
it.
let the cat out of the bag, not me.
Yeah,
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 That's awesome.
that was his story to tell.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. Well, mention it. I think it's fun.
Well,
That's
especially
fantastic.
because it was such a circuitous route to find that out.
Oh, it's
That
crazy.
year that everything
Yeah,
was falling apart and we needed an auctioneer and someone recommended somebody and I called that nonprofit to find out who they used and backtracked and it was like, wait, I think this is my neighbor across the
yeah,
No
street.
yeah.
way. That's so
Yeah,
funny. You're
that's
like,
Well,
is
exactly
he
how it
six
happened.
five?
so
Is he
well,
6'5"?
so uh, so Susan's son Tommy and Morgan graduated high school together. They went to high school.
Okay,
They
cool.
were friends and knew each other in high school and stuff. So
I
And
love
my
that.
daughter
hi,
was their
Calvin.
babysitter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Katie.
Oh,
Kate.
wow.
And so
yeah,
Kate watched Jackson.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Hey,
Oh yeah. So
Calvin. That's awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming. It's great. I love seeing folks we've seen before and folks we haven't seen before. So it's fantastic. Appreciate it. We'll give it another minute, brother.
yeah, let's do that. Let's give another minute. Oh, don't come on, Calvin. Don't push him on that stuff.
Oh, thanks.
I'm trying to break that.
Thanks. Oh, well, hey, Calvin, I can send you one. It's branded. So,
Yeah.
well, cool. Hey, Natalie, thanks so much for coming. Oh, stop it. Well, I'm casual in general, Calvin, but I'm in Redding. I'm in downtown Redding, California, just north of you, Natalie. So thanks for checking in from Sacramento. That's fantastic. Love it. Go ahead, everybody. Feel free to, yeah, there you go. Nibbles
Yeah,
from Orlando. All
Orlando.
right.
Hey, you know what? Isn't that something from Sacramento to Orlando right here?
Mm.
Love it.
Big Rapids. Hi,
Okay.
Lori.
Hi, Lori. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, feel free to let us know where you're from and what organization you're with and all that good stuff. And we'll kick this off. We have a very special guest and uh, Jason and Susan were just talking about how they live pretty close to each other as well. So we'll share that backstory. It's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. And we're so fortunate to have Susan as well. I'm going to let Jason introduce our special guest, but thanks everybody so much for coming to the HGA Free Webinar Series. I'm Trevor Nelson, Jason Ledlow. We're HGA Fundraising. We offer the most profitable auction items in fundraising. That's a little bit about us. We also have a weekly webinar series, podcast, all that, where we give away our best information away for free. So this is part of that. And can't thank you all enough for joining. Do us a favor, a few things. Stay till the end and win. We're going to give away some HGA bucks at the end of the webinar, and if you're in attendance, you have a chance to win. As you can tell, the chat feature is alive and well. There's a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. In addition, where you can, any question under the sun. If you haven't been here before, even if you have, very interactive webinar series that we provide. Lots of questions. We have an expert in the space. Y'all know Jason's prowess in fundraising as well, and I'm here to moderate. But please keep the questions coming at any time, and we'll get to as many of them, if not all of them, in the hour that we have. We'll make sure that we have you out of here at the end of the hour. And yeah, thanks so much everybody for being here. So appreciate you, and I love this topic. We could probably talk about it for 2 hours. I'm not going to give too much of it away, of course, about the content. But Jay, who's joining us? Who's our special
Well,
guest
I
today?
am so happy to have Susan. So Susan Adams is the president and CEO for Ronald McDonald House Charities of Oklahoma City. And gosh, how long have you been there now?
13 years.
13 years. Wow,
Awesome.
13 years. So, well, the inside joke is well, I'm gonna let Susan tell us
Yeah, tell
about
the story.
how
Yeah,
tell the story about how it's funny. It's funny how we first connected in fundraising.
Well, so Ronald McDonald House Charities has a signature fundraiser. It used to be our Red Shoe Gala. It's now the Red Shoe Rendezvous. And of course, there is a live auction and a direct give appeal, fund a needs, share a night, we call it, as part of that. And so we need an auctioneer for it. We've tried a few years with board members, didn't work too well. So we had an auctioneer who was a regular auctioneer. He auctioned vehicles and properties and all sorts of things. And he'd done it for a number of years, but he called me and he said, well, sorry, I can't do it after all, but I've got this other guy, he's great. All right. And I said, oh, okay, because we needed someone. And then he called me about an hour and a half later. And he says, oh, that guy can't do it. I've got another guy here and he's great, and he's going to do it. Well, by the time we're going on to possibly our fourth person, I'm calling some of my board members and I'm saying, yeah, this is not going in the right direction. And one of my board members was involved with another nonprofit in Oklahoma City. He said, we have this great guy who was the auctioneer. So I called that nonprofit and said, who is your auctioneer? And they're telling me all about it and gave me contact information. And I'm starting to figure out that this might be my neighbor across the street who's doing this as, kind of a side thing from his other business activities. This is kind of dropping down here on me. I'll see if I can keep that up. So after all, you're gonna fix that.
We're
for
going
me?
to have a timeout. Hold on just
Yeah.
a second.
Great story though. Hey, that 6'5" auctioneer lives across the street from me.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. So after all that, turns out I had heard Jason do one of the auctions from our daughter's school. Two of our children went to school together. So my son knew his daughter, and my youngest daughter had been the babysitter for his youngest son. And so it was just, and I would tell my board, no, I'm not just hiring my neighbor. This is how I found him. And he's really good at what he does. So that's our story about how we've been working
love
together
it.
for almost the last 10 years.
Yeah.
love
So
it.
it was funny because when she called and she goes, "Well," and I didn't even realize that she had done that because you'd done, been in other things and didn't even realize that you had gone over there. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to go and be a part of that. So, the thing we're talking about today, so
Yeah,
that's
let's
enough
kick off the
about,
title.
that's
Yeah,
enough
yeah.
about us. The thing we're here to talk about is the fund to need, fund to need, whatever you want to call. So this is a really important, I always talk about trends. A lot of times we talk here, if you've been here before, you hear us talk about trends and fads.
Mhm.
So 15 years ago, there really was no such thing as fund to need. I mean, maybe it was something that somebody did occasionally. Maybe there were. I'm not saying it didn't happen 15 years, but it wasn't mainstream like it is now. And one of the things that we talk about how much impact it has, because we're big advocates. You just got to do this. If you're not doing it, you got to do it. But there's a way to go about it, and that's why having Susan come on I thought was perfect timing, because just randomly going out and making an ask leaves a lot of things to chance. And what we want to do, we talk about this all the time. We want to dot our I's, cross our T's, and get control every variable we can. Because the last thing that, we ever want to do going into our event is I hope it really goes good.
Yeah.
Now we can hope it goes well, but we want to make sure that we're going to hit our numbers. That way, if we have an ice storm, the stock market crashes, all these things that can and will happen are not going to have a direct effect because we've done the homework. These are hard enough to do anyway. Susan and I were talking
They're
about,
a lot of work.
they're a lot of work. So we might as well do it in where we're going to raise the most money and really get there. So Susan, talk to us about how Share a Night has evolved.
That's
Originally,
the branding for your fund to need.
Yeah.
It's so
For-
cool.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm with Ronald McDonald House Charities. We're celebrating 40 years this year in Oklahoma City or in Oklahoma. 50 years as a global charity, but we provide compassionate hospitality for families who have hospitalized children. They've traveled far from home. They're the children who have spent the longest time in the hospital, have traveled the furthest distance, and are the most seriously ill. So it's a pretty big need, and a lot of people think that McDonald's funds everything, but no one corporation can fund all of our needs. So we have a great partnership in that regard. We rely greatly, though, on local fundraisers because McDonald's is supporting our global charity. And offices and the resources we receive, it means all of our money stays local. So when we can connect with donors in a group setting where they're hearing from families, they're hearing about our mission, they're in a group and we have their attention, it's a great time for a fund to need appeal, whereas we might spend a long time trying to get in front of one of those donors. So I actually inherited a Share a Need, but I will say that the Share a Night appeal, because we couch that in terms of the nights of stay that a family is with us. And some families can be with us a year. The average is 2 to 3 weeks, but most families of a premature infant are with us 90 days. So as an attendee at our Red Shoe event, when you start thinking about how many days you are away from home, when you're a legislator and you realize how many days you've been away from home to serve in the state capital of your state, that nights away from home starts to resonate. So our Fund a Need is anchored around the share a night of stay, which right now is about $92 a night. And that was pivotal when we started working with Jason about 9 years ago, because I had inherited an appeal where the video was 10 minutes. So that was unconscionable. It was way too long. They were the stories about the families who weren't able to take their child home, as opposed to the stories that of the people who were able to take their child home. And you can have every bit as much of an impact, if not more, with the stories of the families who are able to take their children home from the hospital on that. So we shortened that up, and we started having families come and speak, you know, as opposed to just playing a video of several families for our guest. But I think that real turning point when we started working with Jason in 2015 was, instead of doing our Fund a Need as this much laundry detergent for our Ronald McDonald Family Room, our day use program, or this much to fill our pantry, or this much to have snacks, or clean linens, or whatever, was not nearly as appealing to our guests as fund a night, so a family has a place to sleep, food to eat, and a community of support. And it was Jason who introduced that in 2015, and we doubled. Now remember, those are not today's dollars by any stretch, but we doubled that share a night appeal from 30,000 to over 60,000 that year. And now we're plus or minus on average about $150,000 for that appeal. We've shifted to videos of individual families played strategically during our event. And inviting the family to come out and speak briefly. That way we control the narrative a bit more, we get the main messages across, but there's also a personal appearance, and they could say thank you, or they can say 2 or 3 minutes worth, but they're not there with the fear of public speaking, you know, for that event. So we found that that's a really great mix for us on what we're doing with Share a Night. And of course we have lots of other event elements as well.
You know, and just, I want to tell everybody, I had forgot about that the Share Night came about and whenever, and so it was very kind of Susan to bring that up, because I'd quite frankly forgot about it. But I use this as an example a lot, because it happens, and I see people say, well, you know, how do I make that change? How do I do that? For, you know, Ronald McDonald House Charities is really simple. But it's simple for everybody if you think about it. But the idea is you want to get everybody pulling for the same goal. The whole idea is, what is it that we do? We take families who have a child in Children's Hospital, and we let them come stay. They may live 4 hours away. So they're either, you know, and all of us who have spent time in the hospital with somebody, you know, it's really rough. And so if you've got other little kids, let's say that you're a family of 4, and you've got a 3-year-old, and you've got a preemie that's in the hospital. What are you going to do? Haul them back and forth? This lets them come together. So what the idea was with Share a Night, from my standpoint, was to get everybody pulling the same way. No matter what you gave, whether you did 100 nights, you're able to do that, you know, or 1 night. Everybody is invested in that same thing. And it gets a little bit odd when somebody goes, hey, who's going to pay for the detergent? Hey, who's going to pay for the, you know, the electric bill? Who's going to do? And it just, it's
Doesn't
so
resonate
eclectic.
as much.
Well, it's so eclectic. It's all over the place, and
Yeah.
it likes a patchwork quilt. And what we want to do is have something that's seamless, that everybody it covers everyone.
It's also not emotional when you mention detergent and electric bills. And
Yeah,
whatnot. It sounds
yeah.
so
Well-
emotionally driven with what y'all created.
You can't imagine yourself in those person's shoes.
No
in that,
question. Yeah.
you know, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what would you do if this were your child, if this were your family,
Mm-hmm.
if you had to choose between staying with your child in the hospital or your child at home. And Jason pretty much said, well, this is what I'm going to do tonight. You know, we were working on a list that he'd worked with the year before. So that's how much trust I
I could
had,
see that.
you know, in this. And I said, okay. And you were also really good early on to clue into the emotions. Do you remember those
Yeah.
storyboards we talked about? You clued into the emotions that parents go through, because for us, they wind up, they never imagined this would happen. You
Yeah.
know, they may not know anyone, they may not know of this disease, et cetera. They are needing to make critical decisions about their child's care. They're not trained medical professionals, and they have to learn a lot of complex medical terminology, you know, very quickly. And people who haven't gone through that don't really understand everything they're going through. So,
Yeah.
and it's all walks of life. So when we look at the people who are in our room, sometimes we have guest families there, and they aren't people who would be going out to fundraisers and purchasing tables. But critical illness in a family strikes any family, regardless of your socioeconomic situation. So it's identifiable, or people can relate to the fact that, this could be their family. What would they do if this happened to them?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how this happens. And somebody goes, I want to bring this up real quick because, it's not just to hear what they're doing, but it's how you can do this as well. So a really simple way, and this is a question that I generally ask in a coaching session, and anybody who wants to dig in this, go to hjfundraising.com. There's a tab that says coaching. Click on that, sign up, and I'll be glad to spend an hour with you specifically on your mission, whatever you want to talk about. But the thing that comes up, and everybody says, well, yeah, but we do like four or five different things. So I always take it back. Let's say that you do have 4 or 5 things, maybe like in a little bit different. Like, let's say, you've got other things that you're doing. Maybe, you're providing nights of stay, but you also have some sponsorship for some, helping people pay their utility bills. And you've got some counseling services that you do, and you're doing advocacy. Well, a real simple thing to do is just, how many people did we touch last year? How many people did we serve? And then how much money did we spend? It's kind of a simple thing. How many people did we connect with and touch, their lives, have an impact? How much money did we spend? Make it divided out and say, this is how we're going to do this. So that's a simple way if you've got something really complicated. Because when we, I'm going to speak for myself. I'm retired. I'm retired from being an auctioneer. But whenever I would get up there and start to talk to this audience and try to make the connection of emotional, if we make it transactional, then they're only going to pay for what they're going to get. But as soon as we make it emotional, then the heartstrings get connected to the wallet, and the reason goes out. It's an emotional give, not a practical give, if you would.
Totally.
But also, people want to know what they're getting. I wasn't
going to disagree with you, but you quantified it as well. I remember you saying, Susan, it's $92 a night. It's like, of course, it's wildly emotionally driven, but you also quantified it where people can actually I can do that math. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it is.
Don't mean to interrupt, but gosh.
I would take, I think we went like what we raised up, said it's going to be $100 tonight because we want to do easy math. It's $100.
Yeah.
It's actually 92, but we're just going to raise it up. Make it easy on yourself and your donors. Be an equal opportunity receiver, but make it easy for them to do the math. If it's $62.72. Okay. Let's not do that. Make it really simple. Make it simple where it's easy math. They can do the calculation. And then when you've got somebody, when your auctioneer, your MC, whoever you've got that's going to make that appeal, they're not asking for money. See, that's the big thing. I think where everybody gets caught up and I'm asking for money. I don't want to ask for money. I want to ask for impact. So who's going to give 250 nights? Who's going to give, and I'll tell you, this is something that, and there's a lot of disagreement about this. I'm going to talk about this one thing. Because a lot of times, and this is very much personal preference, and I don't want to ever say, well, somebody's right or wrong or anything else. I just want to say that this is my opinion, okay, my experience. I've never been afraid of silence in a room. It doesn't bother me. So a lot of times in auctioneers, MCs, they'll say, well, I don't want to ask it unless I know it's there. Well, we know for a fact that doesn't work because we got a $25,000 gift one time from somebody, and it's just because I asked. Now, I had an inkling that I know this gentleman, I've known him for a while, and I had an inkling that he might, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't point him out. I didn't call him by name. I didn't do anything. But I just said, I think there's somebody here who wants to do 250 nights. $25,000, 250 nights. And he raised his hand. Because we made it emotional. You know, it was an emotional appeal that he could connect with because he had plenty of money. In fact, afterwards, I said, I love it when you show up and show off. And his words, and I quote, were, Jason, I'm just too damn old and too damn rich. And then, of course, whenever he went and talked to Susan, Susan went to say thank you. And what did he say?
Oh, he said, well, I would have given you more if you'd asked me for more.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So, you know, those things. But now let's take that into context. So that doesn't do that. However, and I want to know how Susan does this, because this has been, you know, evolved and become a big part of your fundraising, obviously. So what do you do to kind of prime the pump, if you would, for the Fund a Need, for Share a Night?
And also, can I interrupt really quick, Susan?
Mm-hmm.
You have an event coming up, so you're in right now. You've been doing this for some time now. I remember you saying to Jason about pre-event dollars that you already have raised. So you're right in the thick of this, correct?
A week from tomorrow. Is today Thursday?
Yeah.
Today's Thursday?
Yeah. Okay, great.
A week from
great.
tomorrow.
So for everyone listening, I want to give particular
It's fresh.
emphasis on
It's
that.
real
Yeah, I
fresh.
mean, like you're in the middle of it. Yeah, right now. So just wanted to give some context. Thank you.
Yeah, so we do. We look at pre-event revenue and we look at night of revenue, and we try to make sure that we are ready for both. Sometimes you're ahead in one versus the other. It's great when you're ahead of budget on both, and it's horrible when you're a little bit behind on both. But fortunately, that rarely ever has happened to us. So we are, you know, ready to go for this event. So we scour our guest list extremely closely. So when you do a Fund a Need, I think that you also have to put that into perspective, because that can become a pipeline to a much more robust major gift program. But it involves follow-up and connecting and stewarding those donors after that gift that particular evening. Because if you don't do that, you're caught in that cycle of you're dependent on who's in the room. So a parallel example to what Jason was describing, last year we had a donor, and we had someone who couldn't attend who had committed to a $25,000 gift. And so the auctioneer announced this, but there was no one else in the room who wanted to make a Fund a Need gift for 100 nights at $25,000. The auctioneer went to $15,000. And then a man raised his hand, a table actually not too far from me, and the auctioneer said, "You want to do 15,000?" He said, "No, I want to do $50,000." If that gentleman had that man was not asked for 50,000. If he was a table guest of someone's who had purchased a table, if he had not stopped us and said, and of course we're in a capital campaign for an expansion, and our campaign cabinet chair just about ran me over getting over to talk to him and introduce himself afterwards. And I was coming over, of course, to thank him. And his first words were, you know, "Do you need more?" So there's a lot to that. I think that follow-up, we've not been in a position where we have people teed up to fund certain things unless someone has made a gift because they can't attend. But one of the things we do with the money, you know, here's a line on our invitation cards, our RSVP cards always says, you know, "I'm not able to attend. I'm sure most of you have this, but I'd like to donate X." We direct all of those donations to our Share a Night. Sometimes we use those to provide a match for the auctioneer. So the auctioneer can say, we've got a match for this, for the next so many gifts at 2,500 or 5,000 or whatever that is. And occasionally we've had matches from a foundation that has often helped. But what we do more in terms of targeting is all of our donors know that the reason we're holding this event is to provide essential funds for families in health crisis and to serve them. We stay to that primary mission and try to be very succinct and not all over the board on that. A lot of our attendees are repeat attendees. We're very heavily table sponsored as opposed to individual tickets. So we're not always having a lot of new folks. So they tend to know the cadence of our events and the reception fundraisers we have, silent auction or golden ticket. They know about live auction. They know that Share a Night appeal is coming and that they're going to be able to hear, you know, those family stories. But what we have done that I think has really benefited us is working with our auctioneer to identify prospects and where they might be seated in the room. So at this table, there's a gentleman who gave X last year. At this table over here, I think you remember calling out and having someone speak about why she gave, you know, on that. If we're not in a position to say, will you stand up for 10 for a new breast pump or something, when we're doing this with Nights of Stay, we've had success with making sure that the auctioneer knows who's in our room, where we expect the philanthropy might come from.
You know, I want to just, and I want to,
Love that.
I'm gonna point the finger at myself and tell you something. What Susan's talking about, whenever we're talking about the auctioneer, you can do all the work in the world, you can have everything set up, and if your auctioneer doesn't listen, it can really cost you money,
It's
okay?
tens of thousands of dollars, it sounds like. Yeah.
At minimum.
Yeah.
And so I want to just please understand, because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was a pretty good bid caller, and I would show up and they would say, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this, this." I'd be like, "Yep, I got it. I got it." Because just give me the microphone and away I'd go.
Yeah.
And I was good enough that I could overcome that. But now I look back and I think about how much money I probably left on the table because I didn't do certain things. I didn't pay attention because I was young. I mean, I started when I was 12. I'm just kidding. You know,
It was before he moved next door.
24
Yeah.
years ago. It was 24 years ago.
it's been a long, I was 22 or 3, I think, when I did my first big one. But my point of that is having that conversation and having your person lean in and really understand that is so critical to what you're doing. And I would please, if you want, sign up for the coach, hit the link, sign up for a
Yeah,
coach.
I got it right down there, everybody. Yeah.
I'll help you go through what to say, to how to get your auctioneer primed up and ready to go. And we've done this with people that were MCs. They weren't professional auctioneers. We've done this because
That's fine. Yeah.
a smaller event, but it's an understanding, having that person understand exactly what they need to do. Because you can say, "Oh, Johnny, he's a funny guy. Trevor's a really funny guy, man. He's really good." Well, he is a funny guy, and he is very entertaining in a group of 5 people. But you put him in front of 500 people,
And he shakes in his
and
palms.
he's never done that before. And you'll put people in a compromising position really fast, and it will not only compromise that, it's going to compromise your fundraiser. You've done all the work. So I'm not doing this to say go out and hire somebody, but if you're having that pushback when you're talking to your auctioneer, you may have to have a uncomfortable conversation saying, "Look, here's how we want this needs to go." And usually when you do that, they'll listen. I mean, and it's not that they're not wanting to listen. Most all of them very much want it to be a success. They don't want to be the one that sucked. I'm just going to tell you, their egos are far bigger than that. They want to be a rock star. They want you to do well.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot to that. So keeping in mind as you're going through that. So, but let's talk about, we're saying don't be afraid to say, because somebody says, "Well, I didn't have anybody that gave 25,000. All we had is 5,000. The auctioneer just did 5." But yet here in this case, you had somebody that was willing to give $50,000. We talk about Dick. He said, "Well, if Jason would have asked me for more, I might have given more." So don't be afraid of silence in the room. There is somebody there. If you've done your homework and you've got the right people in the room, even sometimes if you don't know that they're in the room,
Yeah.
as this was a guest, because you guys didn't have a relationship at all with him, did you?
Never heard of him before.
And isn't that
you know him
funny?
now, though. That's
And
awesome.
isn't that funny how it happens that way?
It does happen. We're hearing that more and more, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact. And the wonderful opportunity. You said something. I'm taking a bunch of notes, Susan, because I just think it's amazing because you're in the middle of it. You've been doing it for, over a decade now. But what you mentioned about you were in the middle of a capital campaign and someone from your board ran over there and introduced themselves, and you went over there and introduced, and you had never met that person before, and they were a guest. And we talk about this every week ad nauseum. It's having someone like that in your room. Of course, you have to go over and introduce yourself. Having someone bid on something for $10,000 and lose, that's a $10,000 level donor that that you need to go meet right then and there. And you said something very interesting. If you can recall as well, you do a ton of research about the guest list. Is that what you said?
We pour over our guest names to
Yeah.
see who the invited guests are in the table, so we know
Yeah.
who our share night donors are historically. And if that family or that company can't be at the table, we're going, okay, there's X, and we're going to ask them for a major gift at the end of the year.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Or
I think
sometime
it's
before. Our
huge.
event's normally about this time of year, so we follow up with a major gift ask.
That's a whole nother conversation in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Here's the invitation to come back. We'll talk about major gifts on a later episode, Susan. Thank you.
Well, let me ask
very
you this,
good.
Susan. So now that you've kind of gone through this and it's evolved into, being Share a Night, and you guys have really spent a lot of time branding that, How do you do things like simple things like set your levels that you're going to ask?
Well, part of that is who we think is in the room and
Okay.
what the situation is that year. So, for example, I mentioned we're celebrating 40 years this year. I don't know that there's 50,000 in the room. I think it's possible there's 25,000 in the room, although that individual increased their event sponsorship significantly. So don't know if they're thinking that, that might, it's all that you get into about the, what the donors' interests are or what their intentions are. But we will be asking for 40,000. Who will give us 40,000 for the 40th? So I think that's one of our anchor hooks this year in that Share Night appeal. We can start higher, on that and see, but depending on, I guess I haven't met with our auctioneer yet, but
well, I know that meeting's coming up because it's going to be Scotty's going to be doing it. He's going to do
Oh,
a
great. Scotty's the best.
something y'all might do is when you get down to the lower levels, because I was thinking about this, because my next question, how small do you go?
This is
And
a good question.
so it depends on how it's going, where we are in the evening. So we've done the last hero, last person standing where there's a challenge. I think that works for different groups a little bit differently. For us, people paying attention and, the size of the room, et cetera, we seem to have a lot of confused donors. And they don't realize that they're making all these bids. It's just the last one, and it's
which is what you do not want. Yes, of course.
exactly.
Yeah.
And when we have all of our spotters, so it's a great idea. But when we have all our spotters in the room, then it gets really hard to keep up with tracking on what bidder number made those Share Night gifts in the last hero standing or whatever you call it, so we can get them back in for checkout in the end of the evening. We were running so long and we had pulled so much revenue out of the room. You're probably he's gonna cut my mic here in a second. I can see it's coming. All right.
Awesome.
Last year we were running long in our program and we had pulled so much money in the room. We had phenomenal success with the live auction. Someone who pulled the ticket, I tried to bring them up on stage. It was a golden ticket, your choice of trips to 5 different destinations. They were all amazing trips. And it's a great fundraiser because you can raffle it, on up to 100 people. And we do ours for $250. So we're netting about 20,000 on this when we do it. And I brought he and his wife up, again, never met them before, first time attendees to our event, table guest of someone else's. And asked him where they thought they'd like to pick for their trip, and they couldn't answer. They just didn't. And I thought, I don't think they're stage struck. He finally looked at me. He said, we didn't even know what we were buying. We just did it to support because so and so invited us to the event.
That's awesome.
oh, that's
All right,
awesome.
so I'm going to get to another point with that about working with your auctioneer and how that impacts the events, because he said, he came up to me afterwards. I said, well, you think about it, let us know, et cetera. Yeah, clap. And goes back to their seat. He comes over to my table and said, I want to donate this ticket back so you can auction it off.
Nice.
Right? Very nice. So that ticket auctioned, I think, for a little over $10,000 to someone who bought it. Now they know that trip is probably worth about $5,000.
Yeah.
But they were willing to pay 10 for that trip, caught up in, all of that. But when I talked to the auctioneer, it was not one of Jason's people last year. We were having a different kind of year. But we're back right here this year. We're scheduling sometimes, lots of different things. I don't know how else to say it. Nothing wrong, just, but
haven't
anyway.
No, you're fine, I'm sure.
Nothing wrong at all, but we're still friends, right? No, I just, yeah.
Of course.
So the auctioneer wasn't, when I went to go tell him, he wasn't auctioning that trip again, that raffle ticket again off. And so the gentleman came over to me a second time and I went and talked to him again. So while I'm talking to the auctioneer about what trips he can sell twice, which is another great strategy when you have somebody who's really on it and can tell what type of activity they're getting back from the room and is willing to sell, knows that we have the inventory and the permission or the, whatever inventory, the capacity to sell these additional trips. To do that donor went over to the auctioneer to say, I want you to raffle that, I already have the ticket. The auctioneer already had the ticket. I want you to raffle, this ticket. So just suffice to say that coordination, I think, between your MC and your auctioneer, and because our MC, she covered for me. I'm over there explaining to this auctioneer, which we could sell more of, and selling this ticket. And he didn't seem like he was quite understanding what I was saying. And, that evening about that. And I got back to the table. I was sitting next to the board chair and he said, that MC, did you see what she just did? She's a talent from a local television station here, and she's going to be back with us this year. Jordan Ryan with one of her
good.
colleagues
Oh,
from
good.
Channel 9,
Good.
Jordan Ryan and Carl Torp. But he said, she covered for you.
Wow.
He was up at that podium covering for me, having a timeout with an auctioneer to make these other things happen. So I can't say enough about introducing your auctioneer and your MC and making sure that the MC knows what the auctioneer, what kind of support. So Carl Torp, we always try as much as their schedules allow to ask our MCs to come visit our program services.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can hear about what we do, but if you don't see it, it doesn't connect. You don't understand how we do what we do, the depth of a family's need. So in the tour, our MC was saying, now, do I have to ask for the money? I said, no, there's somebody who's going to do a great job with that. But they're probably going to want some interaction from the podium. And that's when this really rocks your fundraiser. And, you're not leaving anything on the table.
I love having an MC to bounce off of. I think
it's
it's
great.
so good to have somebody, and having that conversation before where you know what they're going to do, you know what they're going to say, even maybe they're going to announce it. They're professional speakers. They're going to articulate very well. They're going to be able to say those things, say it in a slow. Sometimes we auctioneers start saying things fast when we shouldn't be.
Yes, you do.
And we start talking really fast and, hey, yeah, we're going to have this trip and here it is and let's go. All right, how many dollars on her? And we get into the auctioneer part so fast where people don't really understand. So I love having that cadence change.
They'll keep you on
I
the
think
run of show. Yeah.
Yeah, they keep on the run of show, keeps things going. And, maybe there's a time where I need to stop for a second because nobody's paying attention. And we start having a conversation and everybody kind of pulls back in. So that's something I love to have that. And I think it's something that you guys do exceptionally well.
Well, we try to provide all the details on our packages too, on that, so that, both the auctioneer and the MC, but a lot of times when things are happening quickly and people are caught up in the excitement of the entertainment of the live auction, even if they're not bidding themselves, they don't hear those details on those packages. And, if you have something that is VIP, you want them to understand why they should be really happy paying a lot of money to support this charity and to be able to take this trip.
Absolutely.
You said something really, really interesting, pardon me, Susan, and you've alluded to it multiple times because you're giving us real case studies like this is what happened that night. And was interesting, we had our friend Dan from Ducks Unlimited on last week, and he said be fast at the event, fast, fluid, and flexible. And it stuck with me, obviously.
I literally just started writing this down.
Yeah, isn't that funny, man? And you said something very interesting, Susan, because it sounds like, like you said, the person covered you, but the person covered you because there was a moment where you could take advantage of, the moment and the giving in the room, in the moment that you didn't even expect was going to be there, but it is there. And you work so hard to get everybody in that room.
That's right.
Well, and it was $10,000.
I'm just telling you, it's just like people think, I think rigidity is our enemy. And I think that people aren't willing to have that conversation, the moment of make an offer, the moment of talk about, the nights and what they cost, the night of with someone that you've never met, for instance, or what have you. And I please speak to it because it can't be overspoken about being that flexible the night of.
So I'm at the podium for part of the program, not all of the program. We have the MC, we have the auctioneer. But in that instance I described, I had to get up from my table at the front of the room and walk to the podium and, auctioneers bending down, to talk to me. So I had to make that decision that it won't reflect poorly on the charity for Susan to go trotting up over there and say, or have this, this almost like, I don't know, approach the bench or something. You're having this little sidebar conversation while the stage is elevated. So you do want to put on a polished event, but you do have to sense the mood in the room. And especially if you're running long, it doesn't behoove you. You've got to be able to make decisions. And, hopefully everything you planned works exactly the way you think it is. My sister used to be in television news, and one of the things she would tell me is, no one knows what you intended. And I find that very true for special events. No one knows what you intended. So stop putting it through your own filter. We didn't know this, we didn't do that. That wasn't there. What could people have noticed? And did they have a good experience?
Wow.
If you go and the message is good, the pace stays good, the energy is good, and the food doesn't suck, you can have a great event.
So many notes here. So many notes.
One thing I was going to mention, I've got an idea for you.
Okay.
Okay, since it's the 40th anniversary, 40 nights. Let the last piece be 40 nights, $400,
That's a great idea.
4,000.
$4,000. Or I mean, let's stop there. Have that will be 40 nights. I'm sorry, it is 4,000, and do 40 nights, and that way you can just rid around there. And maybe if you get a challenge, if you've got somebody to say, hey, we've got somebody that's going to challenge to do this, and put that up there. So I think you can't underestimate what that does. And what you said, you're there to raise money. And something that you said, Susan, I think is so I think we miss this because we get so caught up in the run of show. I've got to check these boxes. I've got to do this stuff. We've done all this work because putting on a poor event is a lot of work. Putting the difference between a great event and a not so great event is about this much, about that much. If you're listening to it, about an inch. Okay. It's really, it's because it's all hard. We've all had, and if you've been in fundraising long, you've had an event that didn't go so well. And, sometimes it's things, we left things to chance. And what I'm saying in this, in my thing, when we do coaching sessions and everybody hears me say it over and over and over again, you've got to hit on all cylinders because you're here to do a fundraiser. We're here to raise money, not to put on the best show. We're not here to we want to do all those things. But at the end of the day, if you're not fast, flexible, and fluid with that ticket, that's $10,000. That's a lot of money.
Walking out of the room.
Yeah, that's 10 grand that just didn't get there.
It's a lost opportunity.
Plus,
shaking.
we've got
Don't like
two donors that we can now have a relationship. What's the hardest thing to do is to have these relationships. So now I have a relationship with somebody who won, who just gave that, so I can create a relationship there. And then I've also got maybe the person that bought it.
Yeah.
So one thing, and I'm going to see if she remembers this. What were my instructions to you a few years ago that your job at the event was?
No, I'm not going to remember exactly what you said.
Okay. So
I must need to be retrained.
When
you are
you're not,
doing
when
it,
you're
though.
not up on stage, I said your job is to do nothing but shake hands and say thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And because I said you've got other people, committee, everybody else is there to do all the stuff. If you're the executive director of your event, I don't care. You may say, well, look, I've only got 2.5. The average staff is 2.5 paid members, and that's me. You need to be where you can go around and say thank you and meet people, shake hands, and do that during the night of the event. That's got to be your main deal. Because if you're running around because the corn dogs, we don't have enough corn dogs, we've got to get some more corn dogs, what are we going to do? Good grief. You got to pass that on to some other people. They'll figure that part out because, you've got all these people together. Maybe it's 300, 400, 500 people. That's 250 checkbooks, 250 relationships that could be could change lives in your nonprofit. And so be available for that.
Yeah. Make
Well,
yourself. Go ahead, Susan, please.
I was going to say,
please.
I do that during the reception, and I'm more likely now to have a fixed position in our,
Yeah.
reception so that I'm seeing everybody coming in. And then, of course, we do the same thing everyone probably does at dinner time and sometimes engage our board and committee and, thanking our table sponsors table to table when we're doing that. The hardest piece for me was after the event because I never want to ask my team to do something that I'm not prepared to do, and they're all busy, they're tired. They've been setting up. It's been a long day. They're packing up, and I'm not there helping them pack up. I'm there talking to the people that are going on the dance floor. I'm going downstairs at the hotel to the lobby bar, and I am working the room in the lobby bar. And somehow it feels like I'm not pulling it's just my own filter that I put on that. But you're right. It's what I do, and it's where I need to be. I just always have carried that little bit of guilt that,
Yeah, I think at some point, there comes a point where you have to say, no, this is what my job is. What is the higher calling of what I'm supposed to do? What's going to be the most impact? If you think it's folding tables, okay, we'll go fold some tables, but I can assure you it's not. It's going out there and making those impressions of that relationship because it means something to the people that do that whenever you walk up. And I'm talking to all of you out there that are the executive directors, the CEOs, that are running your organization. It matters tremendously because and you can have a board member do it. That does mean a lot. You can have another staffer do it and volunteers, and that's great. But when you take the time and you walk over and say, wow, thank you guys so much for showing up, for being here, for being a part of this, it really has that connection. And you'll be, how many relationships have you generated just by that kind of stuff?
Oh,
Susan?
absolutely. And all the ideas you hear, because they're so full of enthusiasm about the event and about next year. So it's a great opportunity to start paving the way. We're thanking them for tonight. We're not making another ask, but we love to hear that, they're going to join us next year. Another one of our metrics is because of Red Shoes and Ronald is when we're judging the crowd and their level of interest is that more than half of our attendees wear red shoes because it's our Red Shoe Rendezvous. And even the men, red Converse, red cowboy boots, red Oxfords when they find them. Women are out shoe shopping for red shoes. But when they have come for the first time and they've bought their red shoes, we know that we're probably going to see them next year.
That's awesome.
In that. But you get that same thing after the event when everybody is just so excited about the success and all the guests are being a part of that success. And really glad they came, and we were glad to have them.
You're interviewing for next year, essentially, the night of. I love that. Yeah, it's so good. So good. Or advertising.
I'm going to ask you a question because we've got you here. And please, if you've got a question for us on this topic or any other ones, just reach out to us, put it in the Q&A, put it in the chat. I promise you we'll get to it. And especially, and don't leave anywhere because we're going to give something away here in just a few minutes. So Susan, when you think about, like, we talked about a match, okay? I'd like to kind of walk us through how you approach to get a match challenge or a match.
So, prearranged, obviously, I mentioned if we'd had share a night or gifts in lieu of attending, that we would use those. Sometimes we write to a foundation and they will give a grant based on matching funds, and then we have to declare that. So typically we've used them at a lot of times at the auctioneer's discretion to say, this is the amount of the match. How do you want to split that up? And in terms of being fluid and flexible during the event, sometimes that changes. If the auctioneer thinks they have 40,000 and they can get 4 more gifts at 10,000, then they've got that latitude to do that. Most often we have a deadline and we know we need to use that match. We don't want it to go unused. So it's got to come in somewhere in the evening, but we typically break it down into 1 or more levels of gifts, for that match, maybe 3 at the most. It's not normally the highest. We've done a lot of different combinations over the years, a couple 10s, 4 or 5 5s.
I think it's, I like splitting it up. You get somebody that's going to give you $40,000 doesn't mean you got to do it for 4,000 or 40 or something like that. Now, it may be a discussion. One thing that it's interesting because you said, well, we want to use the match. We want to make the most of it. So there was an executive director that made an ask one time. They said, hey, would you do a match challenge and match any gift up to this? And I said, next time when you ask that, say, would you be willing to make a gift that we could in turn use to challenge the room?
Yeah. And
it sounds very subtle, but it's very specific. If I say, would you be willing to give $25,000, make a gift of $25,000 that we could turn around and use the room to get another, to help us to raise another $25,000. I didn't say a match challenge, that a gift, because I want all $25,000. Because if we only raise $20,000, I don't want that other I want the other $5,000 too. And that little subtle change in the ask. Now, this is a negotiation, okay? So one thing, you may have somebody say, well, what happens if, okay, so if you only raise $20,000, so I'm going to write you a check for 20, right? Well, no, we'd like to go ahead and make the gift for 25. And they'll probably have a little grin and go, yeah, okay. But so just those small things that when you're talking to somebody, or they may say, how are you going to use it? We're going to use it however we can to maximize the room. Because you don't want to say, well, I'm going to wait and we're just going to do it we're going to get 25 people to give us $1,000. What happens if you only come up with 22 people? Because everybody was given it 5,000. So having that being, fast, fluid, and flexible, having that ready, especially when that communication with your auctioneer and having talk through those scenarios. Hey, look, we think we've got 3 people that are going to give $10,000. We're pretty confident of what that's going to happen. Do you want to use it for that? Do you want to use it for this? Having that real tug of war, if you would, that discussion, because your auctioneer is not going to know your donors like you do. They're not. Doesn't mean that they can't be effective, because they can be very effective.
Yeah.
But what you're the one that's going to have that secret. I used to walk, a zillion years ago. You'll know who this is, Joan Gilmore. She wrote the society section for the local business paper for forever. And I would go and say, Joan, where's the money at? And she'd say, well, this table, this table, this table, this table, this table. And so I would have an idea just kind of where it was at. But the funny thing was, it never really mattered, because it was some guy in the back that had showed up as a guest who wound up being the big donor that night. But my point is, those relationships and knowing who those people, the potential is there. They don't need to know exactly who the person is and call them out by name. That's not my point, is that when you go to do that, they know, they have an idea. So any of that little bit of that intel, if you would, all that stuff really matters for it. And having those conversations. And sometimes you have to tell your auctioneer, there's a gentleman, you cannot call him by name. He's going to give $25,000. He's probably not going to raise his hand. But if you look his way, kind of give him a little deal, and tell him who it is, he'll kind of give you a nod. Or there's going to be a guy, he's going to raise his hand, stop and make sure that everybody gives a big hand to him, because he loves it. Okay? So having that conversation and priming that pump, because that's information they want. Because all you're doing is helping them to be more successful for your event. And that's the same thing in the fund to need. Be comfortable with silence. I saw a guy at an event asking for $50,000. He did not let off. Okay. I probably would have dropped faster than he did, but he didn't. He just stayed with it. And not only did he get somebody to give $50,000, he also got her, she turned around and yelled at her ex-husband, who was sitting across the room, and got him to give $50,000. And so they raised $100,000 from two people. Because they were willing to be be uncomfortable. So be okay with being a little uncomfortable, because we want everybody to there's tension, if you would. You kind of want to build a little tension, a little anticipation. Is somebody going to do it? Who's going to do it?
Yep.
Maybe I should do it.
Yep.
Okay, because I'm telling you, there are people that are going to be there that are sitting there thinking, I'm going to raise my hand. They want to. They want to do it, especially with that emotion. We've got the heartstrings. We get them in the heart. So, I've got a couple of minutes left. So, you mentioned the live auction. Your guys are very successful at it. That raised a lot of money. Talk to us about that, whether that competes with, because we hear a lot of people say, well, we don't want to compete
big question.
Live auction to compete with the fund to need.
Also timing.
What's
Susan,
your
talk about how you time that out as far as what comes before the other, if you don't mind, for the audience?
So we've moved that around quite a bit to kind of hit what we think is the sweet spot. And the last change we made this year is to pull a couple of raffles, our golden ticket, as well as the raffle for a diamond necklace right before the live auction to get the energy up. So we've had a blessing. We've had our dinner. We've introduced a guest family. We've given 2 awards out. We've pulled these. So we've got the group back with that first family story. They're paying attention. We've done the 2 awards. We pull these raffles to kind of get the energy up and the excitement up and lead them right into the live auction. After the live auction, we do another guest family story before we do the share a night appeal to reconnect back to the mission. So that was the part that you get in the live auction. You're getting something for that package, but you're getting so much more value, something so much more valuable in the share a night appeal. I think you've talked about it like that. It's priceless what you're giving when you help a family that you don't even know that is in need. So that's how we've found the best lead into that. We sometimes feel we'd like to not have a live auction because you have an award which is meaningful to the recipients and impacts how people can be engaged with your charity. And then you have the share night appeal and these family stories, and it's all of a sudden it's like, hey, rah rah, with a live auction. But people seem to like the entertainment of it, even if they're not participating.
Yeah.
I'm looking to see this year, because we've added a couple of things to our reception. We have a whiskey flip for bottles of whiskey if you have face cards, and we've done a 100-bottle wine pull. We haven't done that before. So we still have our golden ticket and our diamond drop raffle.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Those are great
it's a
revenue
lot.
enhancers. Those are fun too. Yeah.
Well, they're great revenue enhancers, and we how I came to terms with how many times we're asking people to put their hands in their pocket, so to speak, after they've already purchased a ticket or a table for our event is really the fact that the wine pull, you're getting that value and more. The whiskey pull, it's only for so many people, and those people are not going to not do that. And then the Diamonds Direct, you're getting a friendship bracelet and a $100 gift certificate for your $50 raffle ticket,
Yeah.
to the store. So when you look at the return on that, and then the golden ticket is the one that I wonder if we will see any impact to that, because that's the one you're purchasing a ticket and it's a raffle, 1 in 100 chance to win before you go into the evening's program. So we'll see how it works. I think we're still on solid ground.
I think you are too. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah, I
like
think
you
you guys do a great job. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I think something that, we were talking about beforehand, is how you got your committees. You guys went through a session where you had a lot of couples that were really engaged for your committees. And I just thought that was a really neat thing because they would all get together and come together. They would do their business. They would get it done. They would get everything done. Then they'd have some wine, talk about it and everything. And really, they were, keying in on that social aspect. And
So they could tag team. If one couldn't make the meeting, the other one could, and then, they had the update that night. Or going out socially because the couples, a lot of them knew each other. That's how they came to the committee. And so they'd go out to dinner and maybe something wasn't quite right with their meal. And you may remember me telling this story in an award presentation. Well, no, you don't need to do anything for us, but what will you do for an auction item for the red shoe? And they're out together. So they would go out as couples to seek auction items and things. And we're not all couples right now, but both of our co-chairs this year, their spouses have been very involved. And we have another couple on the committee. So we found that works for some folks and we enjoy having them.
It's a family affair.
yeah.
I love that.
Well, hey, I've got a winner drawn, Trevor.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, real quick, can I interrupt? I want to go back.
Yeah.
I took 2 pages of notes. So will you repeat for me and then for the audience as well? What did your sister say about intention, about understanding your intention again?
Oh, yes. So she was a television news reporter, or news photographer rather. And when she would critique newscasts if we were watching the news at home. It was horrible. I couldn't watch the news with her. But she said, no one knows what you intended. So if you think of what you're putting on for an event, what's happening from the podium, what your guests see, they don't know what happened in the volunteer room or whatever else, or the banquet servers or anything else, but no one knows what you intended. So if you're standing out there and you don't go, oh, they blew the whole thing, they've screwed the whole show up. If you don't say that, nobody will know.
Yeah.
Nobody will even know.
Folks don't know what you don't tell them.
That's right.
I got you. That's awesome. Thanks, Susan, for sharing. Really appreciate you. Really
welcome.
great.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
All right,
awesome.
well, hey, we're going to give something away real quick.
And nice to meet you because Jason's always telling stories about you and your event.
It's nice to meet you
Well,
as well.
I tell her, I always say that, the story about giving about the $25,000 gift.
Yes, you do.
It was pretty fun. Okay. My winner is Dora Lipper. Dora, reach up there, touch the screen, push the button, push a little harder. There we go. Come on. There it goes. I had tried to change those colors, Trevor. I couldn't quite get it figured out how to do it. I'm still working.
I call them split pea soup.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Dora, you just won $300 in HGA bucks.
Far out, Dora.
So,
Awesome.
Very nice.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hey,
So we'll
thanks
get
so
that
much,
information
Dora.
over to you with the recording and everything. And so that'll all be sent
Someone
out.
from our team will be reaching out
bet,
and
you bet.
we can use
Hey.
it. We don't have our own bank, but we do give away HGA bucks.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have a question, or I just have a request.
Sure.
If you got anything out of this today, if there was something you said, wow, this was really good stuff, would you please maybe share this with somebody? Send this to somebody else in the nonprofit space. That's how we get all this, how people come on the webinar and to see it. We'll get the recording and just share it with somebody and say, hey, maybe this might help you. Might be
it's
some
awesome.
help, or we appreciate it.
Do us a favor. And Susan, how can folks reach you if they want to thank you for your time?
Oh, sadams@rmhc-okc.org.
And
Awesome.
we'll put her email on the deal when we
Sure.
send it out. So
Yeah.
that way, if you have a question directly for her, you can do
Happy to
that.
hear from anyone
Yeah.
with questions. Absolutely.
You rock. Thank
We're
you
all in
so
this
much.
together.
Yep.
You absolutely
And
rock.
she does
Can't
use
thank
our
you.
stuff, by the way.
I do. I'm
she
using
does-
it this
yeah,
year.
she does use our stuff.
Switzerland, Costa Rica. We've got a bunch of trips in our
Yeah.
silent auction.
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
Our
fun.
golden ticket. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool,
Fun
cool.
stuff. Fun
Yeah,
stuff.
love it. Love it. Thank you so much for the time, Susan. It means a lot. It was awesome. I know everyone got a lot out of it as well. So
sure.
appreciate you. Yeah.
Appreciate everybody.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody, and have a safe
Have a
holiday
great week.
weekend. All right. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks, bro.